Hey, Faith Unfiltered podcast listeners. This is your host, Blake Smith, and I'm here for a What's Brewing episode. What's Brewing is where we ask questions about mission. What is it, and how do we make it happen? And I am very excited to have a new friend here with me this afternoon to talk about something exciting that she's doing out on the West Coast. My guest is Laura Schlenker. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thank you.
So Laura has a camp, an inclusive camp for 3rd through 8th graders, and I'm going to let her tell you about it. But first, Laura, I want to ask you to just give us a brief introduction so our listeners get to know you a little better. So how would you introduce yourself for someone that you're meeting for the first time?
So I've been a nurse for 25 years and mostly in the ER, and I've always been part of our faith community, going to kids camps, and I've been a camp counselor. I've been camp pastor. I've done all kinds of stuff within our faith community. Been the camp nurse since about 2009. And now I am the director of the kids camp for 3rd through 8th graders because we lost leadership during COVID and the camping program stopped, and people changed and roles moved. And now my sister-in-law and I do camp co-pastoring because we've got the 3rd through 6th grade and then 7th and 8th graders as junior high. So it's technically 2 camps that we've combined into one.
That's awesome. You and I met this summer at Lewis River Campgrounds, and that's in Southern Washington, right?
Correct.
I got confused because I flew into Portland, and the next thing I know, they say I'm in Washington, and
all you gotta do is cross a river.
And I guess I was close to Mount St. Helens, but I didn't know that.
Yep, you're on the backside.
Well, anyway, so you and I got to talk about this. I am so excited about this camp and what you have done to make it a reality and how it's transitioned and transformed. And so I just want to let our listeners hear about this. And I've got some great questions for you, I think. But I want you to just start off by telling us about the camp. What's it called? Where's it held? All that stuff.
So it's at the Lewis River Campgrounds, which is right next to Vancouver, Washington. And the camp is called Camp Element. It used to be called, so one camp was Camp Zarahemla and one was Camp Wakanda. And with the change in the world, those weren't really connecting with our campers anymore. And we were really changing a lot of the elements of what we were doing for camp. And we ended up going with Camp Element because as you start boiling things down, it was easy to connect what we do with the faith community into the elements. And so we started out the first year with fire, lighting that fire of friendship, that fire of faith. And the following year was water, last year was earth, and this coming year is going to be wind. And it really lends itself well to make a connection that is very simple for people who don't necessarily come from a faith community.
Well, you said this kind of grew out of having these camps, and then the pandemic happened and camps weren't happening. What else kind of inspired you to do this particular camp? Because this isn't just your average junior high camp, right?
One of the things that I was noticing is that campers nowadays come from a different world than we came from when we were kids. I'm almost 50. And when we were campers, there weren't a lot of special kids. There weren't a lot, if you weren't like everybody else, you weren't at camp. Everybody looked the same. Everybody who was a counselor looked the same. And our world has changed a lot and we're a lot more accepting. And so one of the things that we really made space for and we're very intentional about is making sure that everybody was loved exactly the way they were and felt like they were welcomed and wanted to be there. That includes our neurospicy campers. That includes our LGBT population. That includes any camper, whether you've been to a church or you haven't, doesn't matter what color you look like, it doesn't matter what sex you think you are, it doesn't matter. All of that is inclusive, and our staff has worked very, very hard to make sure that every camper feels included. And so as we have some very specific principles of the camp, and we actually bring all of our staff in the day before to help everybody understand we're there for the kids. Period. That's what we're there for them to have a great week. The other thing is we've done a lot of research. Being a nurse, I know that in our LGBT population, over 50% of the kids every year have thought about committing suicide. And if we are looking at populations and the way to make a difference, all it takes for a kid to not commit suicide this year is to know that they are loved and cared for by one person. And if we can make the difference for one kid, we have made a difference in the population. And I can't fix everything. I can't fix the whole world, but I can make it better for one kid.
That's amazing. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew that statistics were bad for our LGBTQ youth, especially, but I didn't realize they were that high. Let me ask you a couple questions about these populations. So before I went to Lewis River, if I'm being honest, I had not heard the term neurodivergent. And I hear you using the terms neurospicy, and I've seen that in some of the things that you've written up about camp. Can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have lots of old words we use. We used to call people Asperger's or high functioning autistic or low functioning autistic or ADHD, but it's really a spectrum. So you could just have, not just, but you could have sensory problems where it's too loud or you don't like certain fabrics or you just sometimes just need to take a break because you get overpeopled. Clear up to we've got campers who are they're not nonverbal, but they're close. They need a caregiver with them because they can't toilet by themselves, but they're able to come and participate at camp. Not only have we made room for campers, but we've also embraced the kids that used to be campers that are now young adults and adults who are also neurospicy and want to be able to give back, but didn't think that they ever had a place as staff. And so we've made and embraced them and the roles and the things that they can do so that they can be successful and made sure that we've got support in place that whether you're an emerging leader, you want to be a counselor in training like a CIT, you want to be the dish room person, if you want to run the canteen for us, that everybody can have there's a great song we sang as kids. It's all God's critters got a place in the choir. But it's, we all have a place and we all should have a place. And, that's put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to make a space for everybody, your campers need to see that there's a place for them in the future too. And so we've tried to be really intentional with making sure that we aren't ageist. We brought in camp grandparents. We try to make sure that we're not ableist. We're making things accessible for people who have different abilities. We're trying to make sure that we don't exclude people who haven't been to church before because we have, church people typically have their own language. So we make sure we use very neutral language and not fully secular, but not fully, church camp, all the things that we know. And so been really intentional with trying to be 100% inclusive. We always have room to grow. Every year we find something new, but we work really, really hard at it.
What's something new you found this last year at camp?
So this last year, we had a lot more neurospicy staff than we've had in the past. And I realized that I did not have a tight enough schedule for the staff that need more structure. And so we've got an opportunity this coming year. We've got more people that are coming in that want to be staff. And I just need to be more directive because they need that level of structure. Up until now, we have a great place to be. We've got a lot of staff that want to be there, and we are allowed the opportunity to really invest and grow in our staff and be able to do those things. But it also brings me, you're like, oh, I didn't know I needed to be that specific. So it gives us good challenges to have. They're not bad, but they are good. It does give us a place to grow.
I think that's really great that you're always kind of growing and learning and willing to hear the things that need to be adjusted. I don't know that I have ever heard, certainly not of a camp, but even a community that is so flexible and intentional about inclusivity. And I just love that.
I think one of the things is I had the opportunity to join a group. It's called Contra. They do dances. And I think the part that has been astonishing to me is that they are the most inclusive group I have been a part of. And we work towards being really inclusive at church, but we still are fairly judgmental, right? If you don't look like people or you don't act like people or whatever. And, I'm like, Jesus ate with, I'm not going to use some of the words that people use, but with homeless people and, if we're being exclusive, then we're not embracing what we were supposed to be doing. And as we're looking at a camp and truly embracing all the people that are brought in, it really is, how do we get out of our own way? How do we truly accept everybody exactly the way they are? And as a leader, I've had the opportunity to uninvite some people who really didn't want to embrace that. They don't believe that everybody should be loved the way they're supposed to, claim to be Christians, and we've made the opportunity to let them not be part of what we're doing, because if our whole goal is to create a space where everybody feels welcome, that means that people who cannot embrace them, we can't condone that. So we've had to make some different choices.
Other than staff members that you've had to uninvite because they just didn't fit in with that inclusivity, what would you say are some of the more difficult obstacles you've run into in terms of creating this inclusive environment?
Honestly, there's not been a lot of obstacles. I think where we've had some at most rub is we've got people who used to run the camp or used to be part of whatever, and we're not doing it the way it used to be done. And I got to have a great conversation with the Mission Center president one day because someone had called and tattled on me that we were doing something, and I got the opportunity to call them. I'm like, hey, if you've got a problem, call me. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. I'm like, if you don't like it, tell me. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to change it, but I can tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's given us the opportunity to have some conversations that I think in the past we wouldn't have leaned into. We would have, as a community, I think we would have avoided it. I think one of the hardest things, I think, is that talking to staff about, if you hear that a camper has been cutting or is suicidal, or they make a statement like, I just wish I wasn't here, don't walk away from that. Lean in. If you're scared, grab, myself, our camp pastor. We're trauma informed as well for how to engage. But ask the question. In general, if somebody is suicidal, they will tell you. And I think that as you look at suicide awareness, I'm also a veteran, so I'm very involved with the veteran community, and ask the question. Don't be afraid. And so we've leaned into some conversations that in the past I think church doesn't talk about. So it gives us the opportunity to do things differently.
So one of the obstacles that I think would be assumed to be present in a situation like this is having the LGBTQ community as part of your campers and perhaps even your staff. Have you run into any issues with that? Do you find people, parents, other campers to be pretty understanding and inclusive as well?
So in general, actually more than even in general, I would say 98% are absolutely, the campers are inclusive. Because their world is different than the world that, my parents grew up in, or even I grew up in. You don't have to conform. So the campers are very inclusive. Staff in general have been really great. It does help that our registered youth worker training does have a portion of, we do support the LGBTQ community, and it does weed people out, because they're like, if they don't want to do that, they call me and I have the conversation, and I'm like, you know what, if you don't agree with that, that's fine. You don't have to, but this is what we're doing. And so, that does help. I wouldn't call it a challenge, I think, or even a problem. It gives us the opportunity to have some conversations. I mean, when I was a camper, it was group showers. At least it's individual shower stalls, right? But we have really, really good conversations, because as we're looking at ableism, Well, the threshold into the showers, it's a hill up to, it's not a big one. It's a little hill, but it's a little hill up to the bathroom. If you're in a wheelchair, it's awfully difficult to get in there. So it's allowing us to have bigger conversations that allow us to be more inclusive, regardless of if you're needing a private space because you're non-binary, or you're needing a private space because you need to get in and out of your wheelchair, or you need to, right? Like it's allowing us to have different conversations than we've had before. And so I wouldn't call it a challenge. I would really call it, kind of an opportunity to do it differently.
I really appreciate that, Laura. And I think that that's good for our listeners to hear. What I really appreciate about that is uh, an attitude of opportunity rather than problem or obstacle, which we tend to look at the obstacles and say, oh, we can't do that because of this or this or this. And so to hear you say, we see that as an opportunity to open a conversation and that kind of thing. So that's really helpful for us, even as a larger community, as we seek to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's so many ways that I want to go here, and I guess the first thing I want to ask is what are the staff roles? I know that as I've looked through some of the descriptors on the camp, that you have some different roles for staff that might not be at other camps, or that kind of thing. So, what are some of the roles that you guys have for staff?
So we've got our standard, you got a director, you got a cook, you've got counselors in training, camp pastor, but we've added in some special roles. So one of them is we've got camp grandparents. We have got a huge community of 75 plus, some in their 60s, but most of them are 75 plus years old, who still want to be at camp. They still want to be there, but they just don't have I don't want to insult anybody, but they don't have the energy to be a counselor anymore.
That's a very pastoral way to put that. Yes, thanks.
I mean, it's a lot of work. It starts very early and it goes really late. And so by adding camp grandparents, there's a couple components. One, many of our kids are raised by grandparents. Many of them have intergenerational households. Many of them, like, to come to a camp and not have that presence is really very scary for them because that's a major primary person in their life. Additionally, as we've added in and we've got more not neurotypical kids at camp, as we've got more neurospicy, that means we need to be able to adapt and cover. So if you've got a kid who's melting down because they're overstimulated and they need to step out, we don't make kids, come participate. You have to participate in this icebreaker. You have to participate. Come back. What we have now, though, is the staffing that we can collapse down, right? We can make sure that somebody can keep an eye on the camper who needs to step out or step away. We've got calm down tents. We've got, on the stage in the main chapel where we do a lot of our activities, we actually have a space that's not in the middle of the fray. It's at the other end where campers can sit, and if they're listening, they're participating by being present, but it's just too much to be in the fray of whatever's happening. And they'll sit and put together Legos, or they'll color, or whatever. We've got all kinds of stuff set up for them to do. And so camp grandparents give us an extra set of eyes, an extra set of youth worker hands, an extra set of just resources to collapse down. Many of them are also have counselors in some fashion. So they're in the priesthood, they have some kind of training, they've been pastors, they've done different roles. So they bring a level of experience that also helps my newer staff. So they're sharing their gifts, they're able to be present with the kids, but if they need a nap, they can go take a nap, right? If they're just not ready to roll at 7 a.m. for polar bearing, it's okay. They can make it to whatever happens at 9, right? It gives a level of flexibility that they need, but then they can bring their good energy to participate where they're at. Additional roles is we have, instead of it being where the campers do all of the extra tasks like KP and clean the bathrooms and run canteen, we actually have individuals who want to be at camp and they want to participate, but have different skill sets. So we have a young man who is autistic but very high functioning. He's an amazing part of our regular camp. He comes to reunion, and his family for I think forever has run the canteen. And so he comes up and runs canteen for us. And he's an amazing human and a great person. And some of the kids really connect with him or see themselves in him, and they know that they're able to do, they want to go work in the canteen with him. And so it gives them a place to be. We've got different staff who they just can't handle being out with all the campers, but they want to be there to help. So they come help in the kitchen, or they're cook's assistant, or they work in the dish room and help just do dishes. We had a therapy dog this last year, and that was, in fact, the woman who brought Sky as the dog, the woman who brought Sky was like, everybody says hi to Sky and nobody talks to me.
Kind of like having a baby, an infant with you.
But what we found is some kids, especially the ones that aren't really good at articulating their feelings, when they're feeling really overwhelmed or they're really upset about something, they may not be able to come and sit to a staff member and tell them, but they can sit and play with a dog or cry with a dog. I know, honestly, one of my kiddos had a rough day. Usually it's about Wednesday when everybody has a rough day. And Sky happened to be coming out for a potty break at exactly the moment that my kiddo was having a breakdown. And they ended up having a moment. And yeah, I don't actually still to this day know what happened, but I know, and my kiddo's not particularly good when they're really upset of articulating their feelings, but they were able to sit with Sky, and then they played fetch, and everybody was better at the end of that. So pulling in different roles and letting people do what they're good at and what they're capable of, instead of everybody has to be this thing or fit in this box, having the flexibility to let people shine and expand their skill set. One of our first years, we had a staff member who has a performing arts degree, and actually decided from working with the kids at camp that he's going to be a teacher, because he had no idea. And his class is the favorite class at camp. We have to actually limit the number of kids that can go to campfire class, because they learn the skits and they learn the songs and they learn how to plan campfire. So we're empowering these kids, because many of them, right, we have almost a 5-year gap of when we had kids at camp to not. They didn't grow up with older siblings at this camp. So there's no pipeline. So we're building our own infrastructure by teaching these kids how to be part of the community and build the things that we're doing.
Oh, so hearing about all these roles, what is your staff to camper ratio usually?
I don't know. I would have to look at the.
I mean, it sounds like you might need more staff than you have campers.
No, it's not more, but it's close. We have, so in every cabin, we've got 2 counselors, and we usually have 2 counselors and a CIT. It depends on, what the ratios and what the campers are. And
Right.
like our older kids, we don't really need an extra body, but the younger campers, it helps. And we usually have 5 to 6 campers per 2. It depends on which cabin and what all's going on in that, but that's kind of where we're at.
That's great. Well, I have another question about staff, but I first want to turn to the activities that you guys do, because with all of this diversity that you have there, and I know in the things that I've read and the things that you and I talked about before, just about trying to create space for each of these. Tell us some about the activities that you do and how they're catered to or adjusted so that they meet the needs of your campers.
Yeah, so in the old days, right, we all went for a hike. Everybody goes to the falls. Everybody goes. And the first year we had camp, we're all going to go look. We do this super cool end of camp service where we do bark boats, and everybody has a bark boat, and they put a candle on it and they decorate it, and then they float it, and they have time to share watching it on the water. And we're teaching them about sacred space. But in order to do that, we need to go collect things to decorate the bark boats, because it's all natural. And, oh, we're going to the falls. And then I realized that one of the staff members, she was she's this last year, she was a camp grandparent, but she was a grandma age. And she would never have said that she couldn't go, but it really would have been a lot for her to hike. And, a couple of the campers chose to stay back with her. And it was oh, you missed that. That's something that needs to change. And I don't know if you've read, The Body is Not an Apology.
No, I haven't.
But it is a great book, and the second half of that book really talks about some of the ableism that happens. And it really helped me kind of be even more aware of what we're doing at camp and some of the changes that we've made. So now if we're all going swimming, there's an activity at the campgrounds as well for the kids who don't want to hike to the water, or the adults who can't get down to the, it's a trail, or the kids that don't like to swim. If there's a hike going on, there's at least another activity. If it's volleyball, we've got crafts or art or cooking or some other class that's happening, so that everybody has a place and everybody has a activity that they want to do, that it fits their wants and needs.
I also read something in some descriptions that you sent me about food diversity.
Oh, yeah.
I am very interested to hear about that because I know a lot about picky eaters.
So part of the stuff with partly the neurospicy campers is that often they are very particular in what food they eat, up to and including I have one camper who only eats Skippy peanut butter, doesn't eat Jif. So and it's if you want them to eat, and in the old days it was well, they'll eat when they get hungry. I've had people tell me, well, they'll eat when they get hungry. And I will tell you that I had moms who've never sent their kids to camp, ever send their kids to camp for the first time, because I work with our cook. She's amazing. She's actually a special education teacher. And we talked about, we've made food it doesn't touch, right? If you want it to touch, you put it together, you'd make it touch. It is stuff that kids typically have in their palate or their diet. And all of the staff are taught that we do not food shame. So it doesn't matter. I don't care if the only thing you ate all week long was yogurt. I'm like, right now, what I need you to do is get calories in that kid, because I don't want them to have to go home because they got too hungry. So what we talk to, especially our special kids, we talk to their parents. What specific things do they eat? Because some of these kids only eat like 5 things. And we make sure every single meal has 1 to 2 of their items that they can get. I have one camper who social life is difficult at home, lots of home life challenges, and they pretty much live on ramen. And we were about day 2 at camp, and I saw they weren't eating, and I said, hey, what's going on? Because, I mean, we have chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese Kraft, not any other kind. Like, it looks like the kind you get at home. Like, we really are careful about this. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, well, I don't really like the food. I'm like, okay, well, what would you eat? And they were like, well, I said, what would you eat at home right now? And they're like, well, I basically only eat ramen. I'm like, honey, I got ramen. We got you. I'm like, and so we have the campers who have really limited palates. We basically have a shelf for them that is theirs. They can eat whatever they want. We don't call it out. We don't make it a scene. They just can get it. We also put together, the other thing we noticed is that particularly the boys that all want to go play. We've got a playground, we've got baseball, we've got basketball, we've got all the sports, right? They don't want to sit in the dining hall having breakfast or whatever. So they'd come through, get food, dump the tray without having eaten more than a bite, and then run out to play because it's time to eat. They know they have to, but they aren't really eating. And so we've taken we don't go through line anymore. They do go through a line, but we don't serve it for them. And specifically because your job is to take what you want, what you will eat, and how much you will eat, and you can come back for more. But instead of just throwing away food that you don't want, but you walked through a line and someone put it on your plate and you couldn't verbalize no because it was too pressured of a situation or whatever, you can come through and you get to choose because you get to use the little tongs to put how much on your plate. And so, and then staff are kind of keeping an eye that everybody's eating. And at the end, and regardless, there's always peanut butter and jelly present. It's always on the table out there. There's a toaster, there's toast. We have a microwave and ramen. So if anybody wants ramen, and then all day long, we have a snack cart open. So if you're hungry because you ran out of food, which, I mean, we've got, I think 80 something percent boys, and almost all of them are athletic sports level boys. And so, and we have a lot of the junior high kids, so they're a little bit like bottomless pits. So even though they ate a full meal, it's been 2 hours and they're starving. So they'll swing through, and we've got snacks out all day long. And we don't have kids going to bed hungry. Everybody's got something to eat. And we've got staff with food allergies. We've got a few kids with food allergies, but our cook is amazing about making sure that if you're dairy free, gluten free, we've got several vegan staff members, like that everybody's got something to eat. And so we've taken the stress out of food, and lots of parents won't send their kids to camp because they won't get hungry enough to eat. There's actually a couple diagnoses where I think it's called ARF, where it's an anxiety partially, but partially like a physical thing where they just can't eat. And so having their foods that they eat is the only way they're going to be able to consume calories at camp. And so we've been really, really intentional around this. We also don't do super high stimulation in camp. So instead of it being everybody's at an event and then go, and then you have to run to the dining hall, and then everybody stop, we say a prayer, and we open the door, and then everybody runs through a line. It's now we say the prayer when we have everybody together, and then we've taken that time pressure off of going through the line, going through, everybody's gonna hit the door at the same time. And it lets people just slow down a bit. We have round tables instead of the long, thin tables. So everybody has somewhere to sit with somebody. It's much more inclusive. People actually stay longer because they're hanging out with their friends and visiting. Whereas in the long, thinner tables, it's also more size inclusive because those fixed seat tables are not comfortable for people who are bigger around, or any of our people who have bad knees or hips can't get in and out of them. So by moving to round tables with chairs, we're making it more able inclusive. And then if anybody has extra sensory stuff, we have stuff set up outside so they can go sit and eat in a little more peaceful, less noisy environment. So we've put a lot of pieces in place around food to make sure everybody gets enough to eat and isn't so overstimulated that they're nauseous and can't eat.
Those are some great things about food. Thought about another question that I had about the activities, because I remember also reading something about a neurospicy cabin. What does a neurospicy cabin look like?
So we've created multiple spaces for our neurospicy campers. So we have a calm down tent, we've got a calm down station, we've got a cabin where we're working on putting in activities where you can fiddle with it or just settle down or wheel work. And it just gives people a space out of the fray that lets them have activities that helps them calm down. I think, honestly, we had a couple families donate a huge amount of Lego, different, their kids aged out or whatever, or they decided they were willing to give up. So we've got 2 totes of Legos. As always, you never have enough Legos because there's just never enough Legos in the world, but
right.
But we've got Legos, we've got art supplies, we've got certain campers that will sit and do art or puzzles, or we've got fidgets, we've got all kinds of stuff.
That's fantastic. I also remember reading something about in the activities that you do, there's an acknowledgement of personal space. So touching or not touching, that kind of thing. How do you go about that? Because a lot of games and activities that we typically do at camp don't recognize those spaces.
So every activity, we've removed a lot of activities, frankly. There's a great game, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's like chicken in the hen house or something. And when they say a word, you jump on the back of somebody, and then there's a fish, and you like lay underneath their legs, um, and it's a game we've played forever. But we had a camper who had actually been removed by social services literally the day before camp. And the first time we called, whatever it was, Robin in the whatever it was, and someone went to just touch her to jump, for her to jump on their back or vice versa, she melted down. And we were like, you know what? We talk about this, but we've never really thought about the fact because we were being intentional. Nobody hugs anybody unless you ask if they want to hug, right? Like we're very intentional about, when we touch and how we touch and making sure that it's a welcome um, touching, right? And respecting people's boundaries because especially some of our neurospicy campers, can be completely overstimulating. Our normal church community is everybody gets a hug. Well, if you don't like to hug people, that's very uncomfortable. And so we've empowered everybody to say no. So when we looked at our games, we have changed how we do it. And we also allow people to sit out if it's just not something that you want to participate with. The other thing we do is we sing the boundary song. Do you know this song?
I don't think I do. I remember
It's
reading about it, but
yeah, it's every day we do affirmations. So in the old days we did cabin calls and all kinds of stuff, but instead we all get together and each cabin leads the camp in their cabin's affirmation for the day. So I am brave, we are kind, whatever, and we all say it together. But we also sing the boundary song and then we practice saying no. Please stop. I don't like that. And watching the campers, and here's what's funny. First day, right, the campers who are new, right, we've got all of I'm going to make jokes about it and whatever, but it's a little bit catchy. And you'll hear, it's like you're a little bit of an earworm, and you'll hear kids singing it as you're headed down to the swimming, or if they're headed down to whatever. But you also will hear them, please stop. I don't like that. And you're hearing this start to be acceptable language. And so we've changed how we talk and we're changing how they talk and engage to the point where like we're down at the river. And so we've worked really hard at affirmations. And one of the ones that we lead them in is I am brave. I can talk to new people. Right. Well, down at the river, it's cold and we jump off the rock into the river and you'll hear two campers having a conversation and one camper will tell the other camper, just yell, I am brave and jump. And so you'll watch these kids yell it back and forth and yell, I am brave and jump in the water. And so it's really, so you're hearing them advocate for themselves, but you're also hearing them, instead of making fun of somebody because they couldn't do something, you hear them helping them say the words that help them do the thing. So it's a positive culture and a positive verbal environment. And we teach them to respect each other's space through that, working on boundaries.
I am just absolutely in awe of all the things that you guys have added. I don't know if you started with most of this or if it's just come through being with these kids, but wow, that's amazing. There's one other thing that I remember reading in some of the information about that I just want to lift up. And you might say, well, why are you asking this question if you've already read it and you know it? But I want our listeners to hear this. Another intentional piece is the songs that you sing at campfire.
Yeah. So when you're talking with your neurodiverse group, kiddos, they're especially the younger ones. I mean, they're very literal in general. And we have some songs that are quite grotesque. We sing diarrhea and we sing, other ones. And, one of the ones that I had no idea would be a trigger was bringing home a baby bumblebee. And not only do you kill it, but then you lick it up and barf it. And, um, it was one of the campers was like, why are we telling people to kill something and then eat it and barf it up? And I'm like, I don't know that we were telling people to do this. It's a camp song, right? Because I am it's
Right.
how I look at the
You've been
world.
conditioned, and it was just a song you sang for fun, right?
Yeah. And so we actually have a really talented staff, and they have changed words to songs, and we've written them on boards so that us staff members that know the old version don't screw it up. And we sing them, and they have better inclusive language. We've opted out on some of them that are clearly not camp appropriate anymore. And we're bringing in just a different feel for the songs because we want to be intentional about those things.
That's awesome. Well, I want to go back to the staff question now because I'm interested to know who can be on staff. I mean, what are the ages for staff? What do you require of them with regards to their own level of ability? And you've kind of answered that question a little bit, but I want to just focus on that for a minute.
So, I mean, baseline, you have to be a registered youth worker. We do background checks. You have to have references. So everybody is safe to be around kids first. Second, I know everybody, if not personally, I know them well enough to know and have had conversations with them to know that they are on board with what we're doing and understand what our purpose is and why we're there for camp. We are making space. So what that means is if you're a camper that graduated and you still want to be there and you want to be part of the emerging leaders, we've got gophers who are basically that I just got out of camp, but I'm not old enough yet to be a counselor in training. And they pitch in and they do the running and the helping and the breaking down of things and moving them over there. And, we need help with this and setting that up. And, they are learning about camp, not as just a participant, but how the whole thing kind of comes together. And then we have our counselors in training who are, learning how to engage as leaders. We have special lunches for both our gophers and our CITs to let them sound off, because when you move from camper to staff, sometimes that's a big heart rub, right?
Yeah.
You may not really want to do the leader thing. You may really want to just be a camper. And so we talk through a lot of those. How do you grow into the leader and make space for that? And the coaching. We have, if somebody showed up and they said, I really want to teach whatever it is, I do a little bit of, I'm trying, can't come up with anything just straight off my head, but, I do a little bit of, picking at what that is. So we had somebody who's had a whole bunch of icebreakers they want to do. And I'm like, okay, we need to have a conversation, because icebreakers can be something that sometimes they can call people out and they can make people look dumb or not feel included. And the goal is for that, but sometimes it backfires, especially with junior high kids. So we're pretty intentional about what icebreakers, but if somebody came and wanted to be part of staff, as long as we can figure out how to weave it into what we're doing and it's intentional, I'm like, we've included it. And what that's done is it's given us a space for everyone.
That's great. That's great. So you talked about the staff coming a day before. Is there a particular training that you guys use, and has that shifted as you've gone along?
Yeah, we've been developing it over time. We've been intentional since the beginning of what we're trying to do and why we're doing it. And we've gotten more prescriptive around it. Last year, it was a little dry, honestly, and we all kind of felt that. And so what we're working on next year is making sure that it's a lot more fun. But, it's the growing pains of we've got a lot of staff and different abilities. And so how do we also adjust our training to make sure that it's engaging for everybody? I will tell you, I think one of the best compliments we got is from couple of our camp grandparents, actually. They're like, I didn't expect to learn so much.
Mm.
And I was like, I was really pleased. And even though even I was like, okay, I'm tired of sitting here, but It was really good, and to get everybody together, everybody was on the same page. And I think what that did then is when the campers showed up, even though we had new campers through the age groups, they all slid right back into where the spirit was when we left last year. We didn't have that several day ramp up to get the camp to cohese. It was pretty phenomenal. Um, and everybody, the staff were on the same page. The campers were very quickly on the same page. It was really impactful.
Do you find that the new staff you have coming in, if they're there for the first time, that they already know enough about the camp and that's what's attracted them there, and therefore there's not a lot of teaching needed about inclusivity, for instance, or language, or is that something they just get along the way as they participate in camp?
So it's a mixture. It's a mixture. Um, I mean, we make sure that people understand before they sign up because I don't want someone where they are not comfortable. Um, but it's a mixture. There's people who've got a lot of training. We've got people who've got a little bit of knowledge, have done this or that over the years. We've got people who this is their first experience and they've never even, really thought about it before. Um, we do a lot of, especially people who live in a neurotypical world and don't really realize how neurospicy is affected. And so we talk a lot about there's I am your circle of yourself and your comfort zone. And then you've got this bigger circle where inside around it that's you're overwhelmed and you just can't handle it. Well, just outside your comfort zone, there's a fine line of your growth zone where you feel safe enough to grow and you're stretching, and everybody's is different. Some people have a really big growth zone and they can put up and do a lot of stuff and really grow. And some people it's very, very thin, and throwing them off kind of shuts them down. And so we talk about how to help people engage and feel safe without pushing them over into I can no longer think and I'm so overwhelmed. And so and everybody has this to some extent, but your neurotypical or non-typical status, your background, your experiences all contribute to what your growth zone looks like. And so helping people recognize that, communicate around it. We also do a lot of conversations about tapping in and out. And this is if you as staff have somebody who they've gotten under your skin and you need a minute, right? This is junior and junior high kids, and some people do some really unlovable behaviors when they're having a moment, and some people are triggered by different things. And so we work really hard at tapping in and out. And staff, and it's code, right? You don't have to say, you're like, I got to tap out. And somebody steps in, picks up where you left off. Also knowing yourself and knowing when you're outside of your skill set. And, we've talked earlier about suicide and cutting and things like that, but knowing when you need help and not just trying to power through because, well, you're a staff, you therefore you should know. We don't expect you to know unless this is something you know. And it gives people the safety as staff to grow as well.
Do you have professionals on staff that are there for counseling if it got to that point? Or
we have people who are staff who do have credentials, but we don't we've talked about it. We'd need the right volunteers to be able to do that. And hopefully someday those are people that we do have volunteering to come. We don't have them right now. If you know any, please, we'd happily
send them out your way, right?
Yeah, we got room. We got places for them.
Well, speaking of that, if someone were interested in being a part of this, either as a camper, maybe there's a parent here who has a child
Absolutely.
Gosh, I wish I could get my kid to that camp, or someone who feels a real sense of call and wants to be a part. How do they get information about that?
So, a couple different things. They can, I don't know if you want me to give my phone number or my email on here, or if they want to contact through you, and then you can send them but you're welcome to call me. You're welcome to email. You can go through Mission Center, the campground. but just reach out. Camp links usually come up in somewhere between January and February. So please, if you're worried about it, I will say that a lot of our LGBT parents will call me and help me. So if I've got a trans kid, help me understand where they need to sleep and what we're doing for bathrooms and just help me understand. So logistically, I can make sure that they feel safe. But if you've got a neurospicy camper, letting me know specifics, and a lot of the parents are really, really good about, hey, send me a list. Let me know. These are the 6 foods they eat, right? We've got one camper who comes with their caregiver, and they're part of a cabin, but they need to stay up at the lodge so that they can use the handicap accessibility resources. But we have that. That's why we have it. And but they're still included in all of our activities and all the different pieces. So if you've got staff, if you've got professionals, you've got campers, we have a space. And we've been very intentional with what we're doing, and we've got one of the most amazing staff, and it's growing every year. I cannot speak highly enough about the dedication and commitment. We pretty much meet all year round planning for the next camp. We started already planning for next year's camp. I'm very excited. We've got lots of great stuff going, and I would just say, the more the merrier, and we've got lots of great stuff coming.
Okay, I'll get what contact information you think would be best, and we'll put it in the show notes for the episode. That way, if people want to look it up, there's a place where they can get to it.
Perfect.
So is there anything, we could probably go on forever. I am just so encouraged and excited and inspired by all that you're doing. Is there anything that I haven't asked about that you think is really important you want our listeners to hear about Camp Element?
I think for me, this has been one of those, I'm not perfect. None of us are. We're all trying our very best. And at the end of the day, our goal is that every camper feels like they are loved and valued exactly how they are. And that they want to come back. They want to bring their friends. And that's a place that they felt safe. We've got campers who this is the only stable place they come every year. They don't live in the same place. They move all the time. This is quote unquote home. This has been more of a home to them than any place that they've lived. We've got kids that are in foster care who've moved a lot. We've got people for various reasons. They go from one grandparent to a parent to somebody. So this is a place that's safe. They're embraced exactly the way they are. And if we all had a place like that, it'd be a different world.
Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this conversation, and words that are so important for everybody here, not only folks looking for a camp to go to, but this is the way our congregations ought to be and creating that safe space. So, Laura, I can't thank you enough. I really am just so pleased that I met you and have gotten to know you. God bless you for being so flexible and intuitive and all of those things, to be and intentional, I guess, would be another piece for making a space for these kids and for the out of camp age folks, to give them a place to come back and continue to participate and provide their giftedness to give back. So what an amazing story and an amazing camp. And so thank you. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I want to also thank our listeners. We are always thankful for you giving us a part of your day to listen to our podcast. I am Blake Smith, and I've been your host for this What's Brewing episode in the Faith Unfiltered podcast series. You can check us out at faithunfilteredpodcast.org or on any of your favorite podcast platforms. And until next time, be blessed and be inclusive. Take care.